Hey peeps, today we are doing a video response to the OCCULTEA hashtag and thread online. This is created by Polish folk witch Ella Harrison and the Red-Headed Witch. I will put links to their social media profiles down below. I will also put the link to this Instagram post down below. I first connected with this due to watching the video response of, I believe her channel on YouTube is Jasmine Ambrosia. She's absolutely beautiful, and I really love listening to her share about her practice and her take on her path as a witch. So I will post the link to that down below as well. And after I watched her video, I was really inspired by what she was sharing and kind of wanted to speak to it myself as well. And so I put a little post up on my Instagram story, a poll of if I should do it, and had overwhelming response of yes, do the video response. So please consider yourself tagged if you would like to share your opinions as well. It's open to everyone in the community to share their thoughts and opinions. It was created for all of us to be able to have a voice and share. It's not only meant to be certain people. And the creators of this hashtag and idea itself shared that. So I am looking at my laptop because there are a ton of questions. So you're going to want a beverage of choice. I have 2 hot teas. I don't know how we ended up with 2, but we have 2. We have a London Fog and a Yorkshire Gold. But you might want to grab some tea or an adult beverage or a nice big glass of water because we're going to be here for a little while. So without further ado, we'll get right into it. The first thing is to introduce yourself. How long have you been participating in the witchcraft online space? What practices and topics do you discuss primarily? My name is Racine. I am a priestess, a solitary witch, a shamanic practitioner, and a tarot reader, as well as a psychic medium. What practices and topics do you discuss primarily? Lived an embodied path in alignment with the sacred feminine. I particularly focus on the dark face of the feminine, but I am embracing of all aspects of the sacred feminine and share about that on the channel. I also share how to bring tarot and other sacred tools into your practice as viable aspects of your practice that give you insight, healing, and empowerment on your journey. So that's what I discuss primarily. Additionally, I do speak to the left-hand path, and I do speak to the dark face of the sacred masculine on occasion as well. Can you guys see Gracie back there? It's cute. Okay. What is my personal reasoning and inspiration behind sharing my practice online? So I had a YouTube experience when I was working as a makeup artist, sharing some tips and tricks within the makeup space that I had enjoyed. But I had stepped away from that and was really dedicated to my spiritual path as a tarot reader and a practitioner. I was doing in-person tarot trainings with my mentor and shamanic teacher, Stacy Gibbons. And a few students within one of those in-person workshops said, hey, we can't remember, everything that you're sharing about the majors and the minors. Could you make some videos for us so that we can have something we can come back to again and again and be able to access? And I created my little intro to tarot course. What I guess it was, one of the questions was, how long have I been participating? It has to be 12 or 13 years ago because Vincent's about to turn 11 and I wasn't pregnant with Vincent when I started that. So that's how long I've been on YouTube as a practitioner and a priestess. But I made those videos for my students, just thinking it would just be something we would share together. And a lot of people participated, a lot more than those in-person students. So the rest is history. It just kind of went from there. It built from there. I didn't have like a set focus or intention. It just grew organically on its own over the years. And I really love where it is now, as far as my channel goes. What am I looking to achieve by participating? Do I seek to educate, learn, or connect? I think all three. I think I seek to educate based on what I have learned and experienced and lived. I seek to learn because I think we're always all learning. And so I love to connect with and listen to other witches and readers and psychic mediums and practitioners of alternative faiths online. So I definitely am seeking to learn. And absolutely, I seek to connect. I consider the channel a community. And so when one of us shares, we all share. If we're viewing, we're sharing in the experience, right? So definitely I seek to connect as well. What am I looking to achieve by participating? I think because my path involves serving as a priestess, that is a goal of mine through the channel, is to be able to connect with my community and with my my practice, my clients, those who are meant to work with me. And so that is what I'm looking to achieve when I share, especially from a teaching perspective. How do I believe social media as a whole has impacted the community? Well, first of all, I think it's beautiful that we're able to connect, because I certainly know where I am, there aren't a lot of other witches, especially not witches who are practicing solitary. I have no desire to be in an order or a religious tradition as a witch. I grew up in a religious cult, and it's just, an order is an order is an order, is a religion is a cult. I don't like power dynamics. I don't like those type of struggles and the inevitable conflicts around control and authoritarianism that inevitably happen. So for me, I think social media, a positive is that I'm able to connect with other witches who are living their practice and pulling from diverse areas, arenas, genres, pantheons, and experiences. And so that's a beautiful thing, that social media allows us to connect in that way. So it's really opened up the community, I think. A negative to the social media piece is covered in the next question as well. How do I think social platforms such as TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube have impacted education and sharing information? I love long form content, so podcasts and YouTube, for me, are my favorite resources. I think a negative to social media in regards to the community is that because it becomes so much about the visual with Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and platforms like that, you can forget that it can become more about, do I have the latest hot item? Or if my altar doesn't look like that, I'm not a real witch. Than it does about embodying and living the practice, which is a very, very different thing. Also, part of following a left-hand path or an alternative spirituality path is that some things are meant to be kept secret. And I think we lose that when we get into showing everything that we're doing all the time. We forget that there are some things that should be kept private. That is part of their magic. So I see those things as negatives. Is consuming witchcraft content becoming a substitute for practice? To an extent, yes, I do think it is. I think it becomes about looking at and watching and reading and doing that piece of the puzzle, and less about, again, lived embodiment, which means you've got to be journeying with your guides. You've got to be doing your tarot work. You've got to be working that ritual. You've got to be out in nature. You need to know how you personally connect with the elements, not just what the elements are, right? I mean, that's the difference with a lived practice versus just consuming the content. So yeah, I do think to a certain extent right now, consuming witchcraft content has become a substitute. I think something that I've noticed in younger witches, and this isn't me giving someone necessarily a hard time, but it's more just something I've noticed, especially actually in person. Sometimes people will come up to me and say, oh my God, I'm a witch too. And, and it's all about like where they get their essential oils or where they buy their crystals or who they go through that makes this specific grouping of herbs that they have placed in a sachet for this or that. And that's really not what witchcraft is to me. So I've seen this kind of shift with younger witches outside of how am I experiencing my path, embodying it, into it seems more like, what do I have that makes me a witch? Those things don't make you a witch. You're a witch by living the path. So that is just something that I've noticed. That's been a little concerning for me, I guess I would say personally. Also, just because you can put together a poultice doesn't make you an authority to the nth degree on witchcraft, right? No different than I am not an advanced or ultimate authority on occult symbolism within the Thoth Tarot, and I wouldn't pretend to be, because that's just not where I'm at. If we're going to talk Rider-Waite-Smith, I can certainly be of service to you there, but not with Thoth. Do you see what I'm saying? So next, topic 2, influencer authenticity. Out of what I share on social media, how much of it is staged versus reality? I made a very clear intention with my Instagram page that I would only show what's real, but I often don't share it until I've taken down that altar, or I've already done that card spread, or I've already gone to the ocean and had the experience. So the way that I've found to work my honoring of the sacred secrecy of my path is that I don't share it in real time, but I do and I might remove a piece of something that I'm doing on that altar if I'm sharing it, but I don't stage an altar or stage a location to look a certain way. I don't. And one of the things that because I did watch Polish Folk Witch's video where she was saying we all stage things. This is like actually my bedroom. This is where I actually live. This is my actual artwork I have up all the time. I mean, Gracie lives here. This is my actual real life. Like this, I dress this way pretty much all the time. Like 90% of the time you are going to see me in black velvet or lace. So to me, this isn't staged, it's reality. And I made a very clear intention with that. Now, that being said, aesthetically, when I am doing imagery of myself, I'm definitely wearing makeup and things like that. So I do set an intention for what I want to feel, but I consider that invoking the goddess, and I call the goddess in before I engage in any of that practice. I mean, before I put on my makeup this morning, I connected with a specific face of the goddess. I consulted her about what to wear for this particular video. That's just what I do. So we could say that, I guess, to an extent, accoutrement of aesthetic is staged, but it's my real life. Like it's how I move through the world. And I had an innate understanding, and I have since the beginning of this life for myself, having to knock on doors and talk to people about a religion I didn't believe in. People can tell when something is not authentic. And they could tell when I was knocking on those doors that I didn't want to be knocking on those doors, even though I was doing it 70 hours a month. So when it comes to what I put out there in the world, if it doesn't resonate authentically, and if it isn't in alignment with this, I don't put it out there, because I understand that it's not going to be received in the way that is in alignment with my purpose. So I'm very intentional about that. I think about things before I do them when it comes to my online presence. Do I think there is an element of censorship in online spaces? How do I decipher what is appropriate to share online versus what to keep privately? Is this based on social media etiquette or a personal preference? Well, yes, I do think there's censorship. I think if you're going to hold, and let me speak to a few ways that this can show up. I think if you are holding a space of priestess within a community, you don't bring your mess to the table. So if I'm in the middle of a breakup, which there have been a few over the last couple of years, I don't share it while I'm in the midst of the heartbreak. I will share about the breakup after I've processed, but I don't bring my processing, I don't bring my shadow work for public viewing. I don't think it's appropriate. So that is a way in which I will censor. I don't share in the moment when I'm in pain. I don't turn on the camera and just start talking and go and then upload that. And because again, I am holding a space. I'm holding a space. And in my shamanic trainings were deeply powerful for me around that. One of my teachers, my other teacher besides Stacy, Levity Farrell, was rigorous with me around this, around how you step into the mantle of priestess, and when you do, what shifts And that is a part of it. And I will honor her legacy around that. It's the same. I honor her legacy when I call in deity and when I get dressed to hold this space, and in the jewelry that I wear, how I adorn myself. Seeing her, she used to hold the full moon observances every espit. And part of the beauty of those observances, and I charge the same exact price she did for hers, and I won't change it because it's in honor of her. I do Sabbath observances, not espits, but was to see what she was wearing and how she had the altar decorated and presented for all of us in the circle. It was one of the most magical, beautiful experiences to be part of, to sit in front of, and to just sit in the essence of the sacred feminine. And of course, she also had a background as an opera singer as well. So she understood the power of stepping into a different space through what you present. So I don't think messy does well. I don't think messy is a good look for a priestess in regards to, I think especially for my age, so I'm about to turn 40, and you'll see some people, this is why I hate Facebook. I'm really sharing a lot here. We're just chatting away. I don't get on Facebook. I don't use Facebook. It cross posts for me on Instagram from Instagram right now. But one of my least favorite things on Facebook is when someone, a fellow peer of mine, not in the spiritual community, but just like in life, in the real world, is online whining about how awful their ex is and how terrible their life is. Like, that's gross. In the same way that only ever posting when you go on vacation and when you look like you're making $1 million, like, those are the opposite ends of that spectrum, and that is gross, right? So I do think that the censorship for me as a priestess is, I don't bring the mess to the table to share until I'm aware of my ownness in the mess, and until I've done my own shadow work around it, so that I can speak to it with clarity instead of chaos and drama. Now, another way in which I censor is I do not put all of my practice as a witch online. Again, some of it's supposed to be secret. That's the magic of it. So I don't share that, and I won't share certain aspects of my practice. So that's another way I censor. Social media etiquette. I think kindness, compassion, and grace are important across the board. And so that's the etiquette that I have in mind when I interact with members of the community. So I would say, do I censor around that? If I don't like a video or agree with someone's opinion, I don't feel I need to tell them that necessarily, right? I mean, I can click off, or I can just choose not to engage with that part of their practice or experience. So I guess that is a censoring, but I feel that that's a kindness and an aspect of grace and compassion, right? No different than if a Christian gets on one of my videos around Satan and Lucifer and feels a need to start quoting scripture for me. That's not necessary. That's not kind. That's not graceful, right? So I don't do that in return to other people who are creating content. You're not going to see me on a Christian's video expressing what I think about their God, right? It's just not appropriate. It's not necessary. Have I ever encountered or heard of grifters in our community? Do I recognize them? What are significant signs of grifters in the community? Absolutely. We've all come across grifters, and a lot of times they pose as us, those of us who are creating content. The first way you can tell it's a grifter is they're going to ask you for money, or they're going to tell you they're going to read for you. An actual reader will never approach you via message and say, hey, I'd like to do a reading for you. An actual reader has a shop set up, either inline, in person, or both, and you go to the person. I'm a strong believer, because I was involved in proselytizing as a child. You go to your teachers. You find your teachers, and then you decide to work with them. The teacher doesn't come to you and ask you for money. So for me, like, first sign of a grifter is that. So if someone ever is sending you a private message asking for you to pay them for a reading, that's not who you think it is. And to me, that's something where I feel like common sense is very helpful. in that, like, don't get swept up in the moment, like check in, so slow down, because nobody needs a reading overnight. If you're getting a reading within a 24-hour turnover because you're freaking out if your partner's cheating on you or you don't know how you're going to pay your rent for the month, that's not in alignment. That's not a reading that should probably happen. That's why I have a 12 to 14 day turnover on my readings. Panic readings and those who pander to panic readings, I do feel align with an energy of grifter. From the standpoint of you are in a weakened space, you're freaking out, you're scared, and someone is taking advantage of your fear in that moment. Whereas my experience with all of my teachers and the readers that I trust, and I do get readings, I believe in readings, it's what I do. So I receive and purchase readings myself as well, or I have an exchange with someone I trust. And there is an importance to not taking advantage of someone when they're in the fear space. Energy exchange is important, but there's also that level where you're getting perhaps taken advantage of. And I think the easiest way to tell that is you're going to feel a sense of dis-ease in your chest. Like for me, if I get that feeling, that's not the reader for me. And whatever is being offered is probably not in alignment with my best interests in that moment. So again, I think intentionality, common sense, and just slow down. If someone's trying to rush you into something, like, oh, you got to purchase this workshop expires in 24 hours. Now, I know I do have a number cap on my offerings. It's because, guys, I'm actually working as a priestess. I was trained in this tradition, and I can only hold a space for so many beings in one circle. So if a circle is 300 people large, the energy output that's required for that, I can't show up as a mom for my son the way that I need to in my life. So that's why I have a cap on the number. But if someone's like rushing you to purchase a $1,000 workshop overnight, that's someone that's trying to make money. That's not someone who's trying to offer you something that's going to assist you in your spiritual journey. I could talk about this for an hour. I'm going to stop myself. What tools are helpful to decipher misinformation, and how can we as a community prevent widespread misinformation? Like I just said, slow pace, groundedness, common sense, pay attention. Pay attention to the person's content in general. Don't take anything anyone says as gospel, even me. A lot of my practice is based on personal lived relationship with my deity, walking a path day after day, living and breathing this. So it is what is truthful for me, but it may not be what's truthful for you. So again, if something isn't resonating in your heart, if something isn't feeling right for you, that's not helpful information for you. And so you don't need to tap into it and go along with it. Another thing that I think is important here is you also don't have to believe what another witch does across the board. You may not believe how I work with deity, but maybe you like how I read tarot. And so you come to my content for tarot, not deity work. Like, you don't have to agree 100% with what someone does. The other thing that I do think is important here is if someone is offering teachings, it is helpful to just feel into, see, do a little research. How long have they been teaching? What have they done to be able to speak in some form of authority or wisdom around the topic, right? This is something that I do think is important. Now, age doesn't really mean anything when it comes to this, because you can be 70 and only just started exploring a path of witchcraft. You can be 25 like I was and have already been doing readings for a number of years. So it's not necessarily about how old is someone. It's more about how long have they been doing readings if they're teaching tarot. Who have they studied under if they're teaching a certain lineage or tradition. Doing your research in that way is going to help with misinformation. And I do feel that that responsibility is on us. You know, if you're gonna invest in something, and this might just be an earth sign thing, but if I'm investing in something, I'm doing my research before I make that investment to ensure that I'm going to get what I want out of it. It's why I will gladly invest more money in something of quality that I know is going to last me for years and years and years, instead of buying the cheap knockoff fast fashion thing, right? So that applies to the spiritual community as well. Do your research. An example of this is like in the New Age community. I know that Joe Dispenza is like a really big deal, but if you actually are connected with scientists, and I was in a relationship with someone who was studying to become an astrophysicist, who was in the middle of finishing his thesis, and he said to me, I was managing Made on Earth at the time, which is a little New Age and retail store in Wolfboro, New Hampshire. And Joe Dispenza was all the rage within the community there at that point in time. And he said to me, do your research. He doesn't have the scientific background he says he does. And he showed me that he didn't have, that Joe Dispenza was misrepresenting his scientific background. So it's like those kind of things will help you to see. And I knew as soon as I saw that wasn't anything I needed to waste my time on reading his work or understanding what he was doing. If you love Joe Dispenza, please don't think I'm saying you shouldn't follow him. I'm just saying, for me, that's an example of doing research and knowing that, hey, not someone I necessarily need to spend my time aligning it with energetically. How does a large following impact the perception of the creator? Does this immediately make them an expert? Or are there other assumptions as to why they may have a large following? Well, I think first of all, we have to look at what makes something popular, right? It's probably attractive to a large number of people. Let's not pretend that that's not the truth. Something being attractive and beautiful and gorgeous and aesthetically pleasing doesn't necessarily mean that someone is an expert in the craft or the field. And so to me, when I see a large following, that doesn't make me think that this person is an expert. I might really enjoy how beautiful something that they've taken a photograph of is, though, and that might inspire me to wear a certain color or try a different lipstick, right? Or maybe I like the way that they've represented water on their altar. I might consider how I would make that my own in my path, but I wouldn't necessarily consider that person an expert on witchcraft. They just happen to be able to connect with a large number of people who really enjoy their energy and find them aesthetically pleasing in some way, shape, or form, right? The other thing is that kind of, what do they call that? Like, what do the kids call that these days? Clickbait or whatever? Like, the other thing is they might just be able to market themselves to a larger, wider audience. For me, I like the people that are off the beaten path, that you've got to go and find, right? Like, I remember way back in the day, back even before I had started Owl Moon 513, I loved Mirth and Reverence. And she was like just doing her own practice, sharing honestly and truthfully. And I loved just having a cup of tea, listening to her talk about her craft, right? So for me, like, that's what draws me in, is when I feel like someone's really living something. And a large audience doesn't necessarily mean someone's living something. It just means that they can market well, which is not a bad thing. Again, beauty, finding something beautiful doesn't mean you shouldn't enjoy it. It doesn't necessarily mean someone's an expert. Doing your research will help you to see that. How does one maintain the balance of authenticity and content creation? This is a very good question. As someone who strives to find this balance often, I get it. And this is a great question to ask. What I have found is I need to feel the prompt in my heart to make the video. So number one, I look at my viewer request, because I want to know what my community is questioning, desirous of seeing and sharing. And I balance that with what speaks in my heart to do that. So for instance, my deck list videos and my seasonal videos are get very high views for the channel. Not in general. We're talking about a niche channel here, but high views for my channel. But I need to make sure that those videos are authentic for where I am on my path at this point in time. So for instance, this year, my deck lists are beginning the year focused on the elements, because what I've noticed within my community is a lot of witches are wanting to actually live their practice, not just have a bunch of shit that they bought that looks pretty that they don't know what the hell to do with. So I'm trying to ground that into connecting authentically with something, and here's how you can use your tools to do that. So that's how I try to find the balance. I've got to feel in my heart the prompt to create, and then I will balance that in a line, with, okay, what do most of my community members want to see, but also what do I want to teach? Because I know I'm going to put some videos out there, they're going to get a lot less views, but there's certain people in my community who are going to benefit from that content. It may not be popular, but I still want to create that because that really speaks to my heart as well. So that's the balance I'm always attempting to achieve. Here's the other thing I want to speak to, which I think everyone that's made a VR to this thread or subject or hashtag, however I'm supposed to say that, analog life here, people. I think all of us have said this. Look, guys, none of us are making enough money to live off of what comes from YouTube ad revenue. You have to have a gigantic channel to live off of that. So that doesn't necessarily factor into my decision-making process. I make my living as a priestess and a reader through what I create workshop-wise and offering-wise. I don't make a living off of YouTube. It's just a way that my community can find me. So topic number 3, I'm doing good, guys. We're only 30 minutes in. I thought this was going to be like a 2-hour video. Topic 3, imposter syndrome and FOMO. When I follow other when I follow other creators in the community space, does it make me feel genuinely inspired and empowered, or does it create feelings of FOMO and being less than? This is a great question. I've actually been asked this question a lot over the years, and I don't personally experience this, and I want to talk about why. I should say I don't experience FOMO and being less than another creator. My practice is so personal that I look at everyone else's practice as being personal too. So I might get inspired by, let's say, because everybody knows I love Tarot Shrink, right? I love her vibe. I love how she speaks and to what is her wisdom space within the tarot community, right? And oh my God, style, everything. I just love to look at her like, yes, if she puts out a video, I'm going to watch it, right? But I don't feel that I need to make myself or my content look like hers when I watch her content. No different than when I watched Of Mirth and Reverence. I don't know if she's still actually an active creator. I should check that out. But I didn't feel that I needed to make my witchcraft practice then more hedge witch-like. I just was like, this is so cool. Like, that's her practice. So I actually get inspired when I see other creators who are really authentically living their practice and sharing it. That's inspiring to me. I don't feel a sense of, I could never be like that, or am I missing out on the experience they're having, because I'm having my own really kick-ass authentic experience in my practice, and nothing takes away my practice. My childhood really set me up to have that outlook, and I do understand that a lot of people had very different experiences in life, and so this does come up for people. So please don't think that I'm not being understanding of your experience, but you have to understand that I grew up in a very controlled environment where my relationship with my gods and with the land was literally the only thing that helped me to survive. So nothing, not even male control and male dominance within a religious construct, could take that away from me. So I don't feel that someone else is having a better experience than me. I'm having the best experience I could ever have. I get to live my practice publicly. I had to hide who I was growing up. I didn't get to have my own opinions or thoughts or feelings or experiences. So I look at it as, oh my God, this other person they're living their truth. I'm living my truth. This is the coolest fucking thing. Like, let's share. That's exciting to me. So I don't experience FOMO or feeling less than. I feel excited. I feel inspired. I do try to be very aware to not accidentally copy someone else's created work. Like, if someone else has put out a workshop or an offering or a reading series or even a video series, I try to be very respectful of not inadvertently crossing a line with copying. If I experience FOMO, has it ever left me feeling vulnerable to being taken advantage of financially or otherwise? No. I don't ever feel a need to purchase something to fit in. I don't ever really want to fit in or be popular to a certain extent, if that makes sense. Like, that's not, and in fact, I've had to work a lot over the years to be like, just because Wild Unknown Tarot is popular, I can still love it, right? Because part of me is like, oh, it's popular, I don't want to touch it. Like, I like the stuff that's off the beaten path and kind of weird, and you know, you fall in love with something and you're like in deep lust and having an experience with it. So I would say no, I don't. This question, I don't feel I get taken advantage of financially. Also, I'm an adult and I'm in charge of my purchases, and so if I'm purchasing in a way that's not in alignment with my budget, that's on me, not somebody else. When practicing my craft, do I find myself comparing what I do to what I've seen people do online? Again, no. Because I can't read. This is just one example, but I can't do a tarot reading the way someone else does. So if I were trying to compare to how someone else reads, my readings would be so much less effective, so much less powerful, so much less worthy of the exchange. So I can't compare myself to other people because that's not going to help me do my best work. I do my best work when I'm completely myself and when I'm in alignment with my own personal ethics as a witch, right? So if I'm looking at what somebody else is doing and try to be like somebody else, that's not doing any of that. My gods wouldn't let me. Are you kidding me? Kali would just, well, Lilith and Kali would be like, fuck that shit, Racine. I get a little smacking. What would my practice look like without the social media influence of other creators? I think it would look the same. I mean, my practice looks like what it's always looked like. I will say, I might not have as nice candles or I might not have certain specific decks. I will say that. Okay. So without the social media influence of other creators, like if it wasn't for beautiful Empress and Basil, I wouldn't have gotten the Coastal Curiosities Oracle, right? So, okay. So I would say yes. So other creators online can inspire me to make a purchase if I feel like that deck or that candle or that representation of an element is in alignment with my practice. So like when I saw Coastal Curiosities and I had all these feelings about my great grandmother come up and the coastline of Maine, as soon as I saw the cards she was sharing online, I was like, I have to have that deck. So I would say I wouldn't have certain decks, probably wouldn't have as beautiful candles as I do because I would never have connected with October Occult and she makes my favorite candles. So yeah, I would say that would look different. Also, I probably wouldn't have as many red lipsticks, and red lipsticks do go on my altar. So topic number 4, capitalizing off community. Do I consider online communities as equally valid to in-person communities? I do, for the aforementioned reasons. As a solitary witch, I wouldn't really have that many people to connect with in person, especially post-COVID. Pre-COVID, I was connecting with a shamanic community, but they weren't witches. So yeah, I consider the online community equally as valid. You know, and also equally as able to be as dramatic as in-person communities because, yeah, both can get very dramatic and chaotic. How have online occult witchcraft communities impacted me as a person and a practitioner? Well, I think it's connected me to a large number of people that I'm able to share my spiritual views with, hold space for as a priestess, and also interact with and learn from. Like a recent thing that I've really been exploring due to online videos is vampirism and witchcraft. Now, I'm not saying that I am identifying that way. I'm saying I'm doing research and getting inspired by and exploring that aspect of witchcraft within the community. So I think I get inspired by them. I get inspired by the communities online, various communities online, and then I'll do research and follow my own path with it. But I take that as an inspiration and then I go off in my own direction with it. I'm very solitary. I'm very solitary in general across the board. So like I am someone who spends a lot of time alone, and I like it that way. I live in my own world in a lot of ways. So, but I get inspired by online community. And if I'm not inspired, then I just don't partake. I just don't hang out with that group. I don't feel a need to have to let them know. I just don't hang out with them. What are some of the dangers of the current phenomenon of capitalizing off the witchcraft community? This I do have feelings on. With witchcraft becoming so popularized, there's a lot of watering down of the tradition, and there's a lot of watering down of the structure of tarot. Now, I am not saying that readings are not intuitive. They are. But I don't like it when someone tells me that they're reading tarot and they're reading an oracle deck. It's a different system. So the danger is, I think when something becomes really, really popular, you do lose some of the intensity of the magic, and it does become a bit watered down, much like manifestation did. Remember that? Remember The Secret? Remember all of that bullshit? We're still rectifying all of that drama. And just like that got commercialized and just taken in a way that I think took from the magician card in tarot and took from the power of ritual in regards to spellcraft. For those of us who walk a path that incorporates that and bastardized it in a way. So I do see the watering down of certain things as being a bastardization. And I will say, from the shamanic lineage that I was trained in, which is separate to, but walks hand in hand with my witchcraft practice, to see some of the things that were held very sacred to those trainings that I undertook in person. And I took several trainings, and those were all 3 to 6 months to a year or 2 long. To see those kind of things made almost kind of like an afterthought, that saddens me, because there's something really powerful that happens when you undergo an initiation. And when you lose the power of that initiation and it just becomes like something that's tossed out there and whatever, I don't know. I worry about that, because there is a power to an initiation experience. There is a power to an initiatory experience. There is an opening that happens through that. And so if everybody's doing it, and it's how I feel about Reiki being taught online. And to be completely honest, one of my teachers teaches Reiki trainings online. And I love her, and I feel her work is in alignment. So please don't think I'm denigrating that, but I wouldn't teach Reiki trainings online, because I feel like the attunement that happens should be done in person. I just do feel that way. That's just how I feel. It doesn't mean if you've taken an online Reiki training, you're not a valid practitioner. I am not saying that. That's not my place to judge or speak to. I'm just saying for myself, because I am a Reiki master teacher, I don't teach online Reiki master or any form of Reiki training online. So I see that as being a danger, only because I think some things get diluted that can be really transformational when they're looked at as the initiatory magical aspect that they are. How have I personally been affected by this, or have I witnessed someone else be affected? I just discussed that. Should there be paywalled communities in online courses? Absolutely. Yes. Do you know why? And this was something that I had to learn the hard way. Through Levity, one of my teachers, she taught me this. She showed me this. When we do not have an exchange in this realm, we do not value what we are taught. And when you sit with someone who has put together something, and if it's authentic and in alignment, and they've put their blood, sweat, and tears into their work, the exchange ensures that you value what's been given. Now, not only that, but the individual also has to eat and pay their bills. And if you want to have an experience with an empowered priestess or priest or witch or teacher, you're going to have a much better experience if they've had a meal that day. So there's a level of, and this harkens back to the witches of old, the community takes care of the witch. She may not be a part of the community. She's probably on the periphery, but when you go to the witch for help, you bring food. You bring some form of an exchange. There's some form of offering. Why? So that the witch can bring their best, most aligned, most powerful work to what you want to experience, right? So exchange matters. It's necessary. It's necessary. When people say, well, it's wrong to charge for things, please don't take that on. That's someone wanting something for free, and do you know they're probably going to look at it as something throwaway. In order for me to put together a workshop, I have to go through an experience that transforms me in order to craft that content. So there's a story that happens, and if you're purchasing the workshop with me and you paid for it, so you've invested in yourself, you are assisting me to be able to run my life and live my life, and I'm deeply grateful to you for that. Thank you. But you've also invested in you. When you put that money down for the most recent Venus workshop, let's say I'll just speak to myself here. Let's say you invested in that on my Etsy shop and you paid $146 for that. You have invested in you for 3 solid weeks. And if you've paid for it, you're going to be more apt to take the 15 minutes every week to do the meditation, to do the daily draws, to work the card spreads, to listen to the tutorial, to ruminate and reflect on how Venus is helping you to open up to your truest self at a newer level, right? So you're actually investing in yourself as well when you purchase online courses or when you pay to be a part of a community. You're investing in yourself, and you are giving yourself the gift of a full experience. How does one ensure the authenticity of a course, workshop, membership, etc. as a financial investment? Well, this is where you need to make sure you are in alignment with the practitioner. And this can be revisited. I always say to my long-term community members and clients, if you feel called to step away from my work for good or for a time, I honor that, because you might be called to move in a different direction where you need to invest in a different set of teachings for a time or for good. I think that you've got to check in with, is this person's teachings authentic for me? And am I going to get something out of this? And then the investment's worth it. So the onus and the responsibility, that's personal. That's personal. And I'll go back to the Joe Dispenza thing that I mentioned. If you still feel and have felt like you've gotten a lot out of his teachings, then that investment was worth it for you. Even though he doesn't have the scientific background he purports that he does. For me, knowing that meant that I exited out of that sphere of his community. But that doesn't mean that you can't have your own powerful experience with his work, right? Like, that's personal. So that's where our own ethics and our own intuition guides us. I would add, in addition to this, that, when we look at the Wheel of Fortune and we see the aspect that fate and destiny play in our experiences, and I do personally believe that we have contracts in this life to engage in certain experiences and move through certain lessons. We have free will within that, right? But if you look at that Wheel of Fortune card, and maybe let's say you're listening to this and you know what, you got roped into something and you purchased a workshop with someone that it turns out, even though they had a big following, they weren't presenting anything of quality for you personally. You felt like you didn't get what you invested in out of it. You still learned something from that experience. Even if it was, next time before I purchase a workshop, I'm going to sit on it for 24 hours and do a little research and see how I feel. Look at those experiences as valuable learning and teaching experiences, okay? Don't be hard on yourself about them, and just know that next time you're going to take the time to sit with it, to do your research, and to sit with intuitively if you're called to connect with that content creator or with that witch or that priestess or that priest or that modality, right? So don't be hard on yourself. And take your time to really feel into, is this right for me? Am I called to move in this direction? What are some topics of conversation I'd like to see more of in our community? Lived practice, embodied practice. I love that that content. I will listen to that shit all day long. What are my community needs? I would say what I just said. I love and long to see other witches and how they live and embody their practice. I don't need to know their secrets. I don't need their hack for a certain spell. Baby, I've been a witch for a long time. I've got my own spells. So for me, like, I'm not looking for that educational content in that way. I'm looking to experience a sense of community, sisterhood, and brotherhood, and how are we living our practices. So I'd say that would be my only personal need. Where do I feel like I'm not truly being seen by my community? I don't feel like I'm not truly being seen. How can we help each other in removing the external peer pressure and grow in community? I think what I do think around this is to let go of the idea of being popular and focusing on algorithms and focusing on view count and focusing on popularity. That can remove the peer pressure, because when you take that off of being the focal point, then you can really tap into being authentic. And from that space, what I have found over the years with my channel, at least, is that's when you have the community that stays, as opposed to doing something to grab attention that then those people are already on to the next thing the next day. I have no interest in that. I want community that grows and that has bones and that stays, right? How can we as a community come together more with constructive criticism without it seeming shady or passive aggressive? And then how can we do better as a community when we receive criticism and feedback? I think posing things as questions instead of judgments is helpful. And then when we receive that, taking some time to sit with that, see if it's something that we need to take on as personal. And if it does feel like that, then we can reflect and make adjustments. And if it doesn't feel like it's for us, if it doesn't feel like it's something we need to take on and evaluate and shift around, then don't take it personally. I think not taking things personally, the older I get, the better I get at it, and the more I see that it helps free up energy around everything. So do I need to take, first of all, do I need to say it? What's my intention in saying it if you're the one expressing the criticism? If you're receiving it, is it mine or is it where the other person is in that moment? How can I not take this personally? And if there is something that I can shift within myself, how can I act best in alignment with my ethics around it? Don't get into people pleasing. It's exhausting and you'll never make everyone happy. What are some community members that I look up to that are reliable resources and aspirations who are, I'm not actually going to answer that because I think it creates a space where then some people feel left out. As I said, I don't care who you are. I just am interested in what inspires you about your path. How are you living it? And sharing from that space, especially if it's related to bringing it back to an elemental, occult, tarot, or nature perspective. That always excites me. But I don't want to list specific members because then people are going to feel left out, and I don't like that. Add any further thoughts, comments, prompt questions of your own, or offer solutions. I would say, in conclusion here, I'm clearly very opinionated. I also think that there's a power to not following the crowd. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't like a witch or follow a witch who's popular. Please don't think I'm saying that, because I'm not. But what I'm saying is, like, personally for ourselves, when we want to be popular, when we want to be like everybody else, we lose a part of ourselves. And I think that's ultimately what we're speaking of here. Are we all getting so caught up in posting enough online, making enough content, creating enough as creators that we're burning ourselves out and we're pandering to an idea of something that's popular in the moment instead of something that's real and true? And If we can stay connected to what is real and true for us individually, are we acting in alignment with that? And then sharing with others from that space, then we're not competing with other people. We're not feeling less than other people. And we're also not just going along with things to make people happy. We're able to really be ourselves. You know, and there's another piece to this. And when we talk about death magic, this is what we're talking about. Everything does have an end. So to try to stay current or popular and to step into a competitive space with that, there's going to be an end no matter what. And at least for me, when that end reaches its natural conclusion, whether that's the end of my physical life or the end of the channel and its longevity, whatever that looks like, I want to look at it and say, this body of work is real, and I can celebrate what it is, and I can let it go with grace and gratitude. And I think approaching our community from a space of authenticity, understanding that there's always going to be the change in season, the shift in the cycle, the turning of the wheel, the ending of something, which in itself creates a new beginning. Then perhaps we can allow ourselves to really show up and enjoy it, but also instead of buying it because everybody else does and posting that photo because everybody else is doing it, and that grabbing kind of, I don't want to miss out. I don't want to not be. We can let go of that. And instead it can be about, it's not about having the Isis oracle, but do I personally connect with Isis? Just as an example there, right? Focusing on that and also appreciating the chop wood, carry water, blood, sweat, and tears aspect of your craft and practice. That brings real fulfillment and it lets you show up authentically. So you're getting the most out of the experience, and anyone else that connects with you, whatever experience they've had, they've seen the real you and you've shared the real you, and they've also had an invitation and an opportunity to share themselves as they truly are with you as well. The last thing I want to say to this is I cannot stand hacks. I have too much Taurus in my chart. I like the chop wood, carry water, and the blood, sweat, and tears aspect of the craft. There is something that we learn when we dedicate ourselves and when we get up that 30 minutes early a couple days a week to practice for our personal practice, whatever that looks like for us. And when we go outside, even though it's cold, so that we can feel the good earth under our feet and we can connect with the devas of place. When we read that book, even though we're tired, so that we can understand a nuanced perspective on the hanged man, right? All of those things, they create a depth of experience that cannot be manufactured. It cannot be bypassed. And when you have the depth of that wisdom and it is lived within you, as I said about my experience as a child, nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can take that away from you, even if they take your voice. They cannot take the experience away from you. They cannot take the truth of that away from you. So if you find yourself feeling like, so many different things are out there as avenues for me to study. I don't know what to do. I'm trying to do everything at once. I'm trying to learn everything at once. I feel overwhelmed. I feel like I'm getting nothing out of it. Focus on the one thing that your heart is calling you to explore and dedicate yourself to it. Magic is going to happen. In the same way, working with the death card energy, you will know when it's time to let that go based on the promptings of your heart and move in a new direction. And then it's your experience that you share with others. You get to grow and understand and experience others' perspectives, but no one is trying to be like someone else. And I think as content creators, releasing the stress and worry around algorithms and is my work getting out there, and trusting that if you put it out there authentically in a way that doesn't exhaust you, your community will find you. That's where it is. That's where the magic happens. So thanks for hanging out with me for this video response. I hope that you have some thoughts and opinions as well off of it, and I look forward to watching what you guys create for video responses or sharing in a way that feels authentic for you as well. As always, I'm sending you oceans of love, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.